I'm Percy. I'm with the company Ubimax, and we're a software company. And I'm not going to do much of the talking today. I'm going to hand it over to David in a second here. Just to give you a few words on myself, I'm one of the co-founders of Ubimax. I've been with the company, therefore, from the beginning and responsible for the business in the Americas. And we focus on empowering the frontline workers, as many do today, and grant them with all the information they need to do their job properly. And that's mainly done in logistics and manufacturing assembly processes, so guidance and also collaboration elements of it. And today I have a pleasure to be here with David from Schlumberger, and they have been a customer of ours quite a while and moved along the journey, and he's going to talk a little bit about what they really do, and that's hopefully most interesting for you guys. And I have a little bit of stuff that I'm going to say as well. And having that said, David, please take it away.
Perfect. So good afternoon. My name is David Redding. I'm the Maintenance Innovation Manager with Schlumberger. So Schlumberger is an oil and gas service company. And I'm going to kind of walk you through our journey that we've done with wearable technologies and how we're using that in our maintenance organization. So I know we're the last step between this and the cocktail hour, so maybe a quick question to kick us off. How many of you have ever changed maybe a flat tire on a car or changed your own engine oil to save a few dollars? Most of us, right? Now keep your hands up if you use a checklist or standard work instruction to do that. Okay, there's a few of you, surprise. But imagine taking apart an engine, right, or a transmission. Is that person competent? Do they do that correctly? When we start talking about changing oil in a large pump equipment, for example, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And so it's important we do that correctly. And so first I want to give you a background on, when we think of Schlumberger, you think of oil and gas, but there's an organization within our company called the Technology Lifecycle Management, or TLM. And we're responsible for looking after the equipment from commercialization all the way until the retirement of that asset. And this is not a small task, nor a small group. We represent 13 different product lines throughout the company, so drilling, rigs, downhole equipment, for example. Our teams make up around 10% of the entire Schlumberger population. We have around 526 bases around the world, and we record around an average 20 million man-hours of maintenance per year on around $29 billion worth of assets, right? Now, what do we mean by assets? In this case, we're talking about full-size pump and pressure control equipment, rigs, drill bits, all the way to downhole sensitive electronics. So it's a lot of stuff that we have to maintain. And what means consistent is that we deliver our products on time, every time, anywhere in the world they operate for the lowest cost. And so we do that by applying industry best standard for maintenance practices. And so if we look at kind of the maintenance life cycle, so to speak, we have all these assets, and not all of the maintenance takes place inside of a shop. Right? So you think everything comes back to a shop, but believe it or not, majority of this takes place in the field as well, for several reasons. One is it saves transportation costs to bring this back to a facility, but we can also do a lot of the maintenance there on site, right? And before we moved into this digital world, everything was on paper. So you had all these standard work instructions, you have checklists, and as you can imagine, these things get pencil whipped, right? Or they don't get filled out, or they get put into a door of a tractor trailer, and next thing you know, you can't find that. Or it goes to the manager's office, and now there's a stack of 100 of them, and they don't actually read through them. And so I think moving to digital is a no-brainer, right? And fortunate for us, we've made some progress on that, and we have an application called the Maintenance Tool, or we refer to as MT. And this is a full ecosystem of applications to communicate with both our shops and our fields. For example, an operator in a field environment can fail a piece of equipment. It then goes to a mechanic that has a handheld device that says, hey, what's wrong with the equipment? Can I fix it? Do I need to send this back to the shop for repairs? And so our digital progress on that is we're pretty far, right? And you can see some of the stats here, right? We have multiple devices, majority of these being handheld devices, and record a lot of checks per month. And this is kind of showing, as we move from paper to handheld, clearly we gain some efficiency, and we also gain this visibility, right? We're not losing pieces of paper now inside, tractor trailer doors, for example. But what's going to take us to the next level? What's going to help us gain more of efficiency and more of that visibility? And with no surprise, we're at a conference talking about wearables. For us, it's these smart glasses. And if you're in the room and you own some of this hardware and you're not up here, don't throw rocks at me, right? I try to show here is, if you're starting in this space, it's kind of like, where do I start? You've heard augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, assisted reality. If you don't know where to go, it can be quite overwhelming. And the devices here kind of representative, some are maybe more mature than others. Again, some are virtual reality. So if you look at cardboard, for example, we love the price tag of cardboard, but unfortunately our health and safety guys on locations aren't going to approve that. And similar with software. And so I think this is starting to bridge a little bit, but I like to refer to this as if we want to bring the hardware to life, there's a software application layer that has to then come on top of that. And again, I think this is changing a little bit, right? Where some of the hardware vendors are now starting to make some of the software to go on these. But nonetheless, you kind of have this line that draws in between them. And again, this is just kind of a subset of the application and the companies that are out there. Some are focused on augmented reality, some are focused on assisted reality. And so it's finding what best fits in your organization. And for us, this is the RealWare HMT1, and of course our friends here at Ubimax, as well as some of the internal stuff that we're doing with our tool called the maintenance tool. And I don't think I have to share some of these. I think they've been talked about widely. Again, you can go see RealWare, but the big one for us is the 100% hands-free. And then if I had the device here, I could drop it on the ground, right, and I could pick it back up and continue to work with it. It's very important for us to have that industrialized aspect. And so if we move into our journey with Percy's helps here, we kind of broke this out into kind of 3 phases, right? And you've heard different conversations today from different people speaking of like where do you start and how do you get all the way to that kind of number 3 step, right? As a full-on rollout and productive use. And it's a challenge, right? And so I'll try to give you a little bit of insight on how we've approached this. And so starting at the first one of a proof of concept. How do you get management to buy in to say, I'm going to spend X amount for these devices, then we have to develop the software, we have to develop the content. Is it bringing me that value, right? Am I gaining that efficiency that I think I'm going to gain? And again, we've seen that it is, and I'll show you a little bit how we're going to do that. So we kind of put this into 3 bullet points for each one. The first one being here of technology introduction. We're now moving from handheld to hands-free. It's important to take all of our workforce, especially our field environments, and are they going to adapt to this technology? We have to introduce it to them in a way that's very friendly and acceptive, because quite frankly, and I'll move to the second one, the user adaptability. If we take a piece of hardware and it doesn't even have to turn on, right? And you take it to a guy in the field and say, hey, you're going to wear this for 12 hours a day, and it's not comfortable, or it's heavy, or makes them dizzy. Guess what? No matter what software we develop is not going to fix this, right? So it's very important when we started to take these devices to the field and let them to get the hands-on feel without them even doing anything. And that really got us the momentum, that feedback from our field technicians to say, yeah, I'm going to use this, right? This makes my job easier. So that was very important. And the last one here is a turnkey solution. So ultimately, we decided to use Ubimax. It's very important that we could take that and move to a proof of concept scale very, very fast. I don't know if you want to comment on any of these or.
Yeah, and I think you hit on the right points here. So, there's lots of different people here at this event, and you're all at a different stage. Some of you are in a very early phase, some have progressed already and they have some experience, and some are already rolling out at a larger scale. And in the initial phase, typically what we see, companies are unsure about the hardware, the software, and these combinations of things. So what is super important in the beginning of the journey is to take away that uncertainty and make it very easy to comprehend and to start. So, and that means if you're able to test a certain software solution like ours that is hardware agnostic, you can, and hopefully it's going to reunite us a little bit as some of the logos disappeared early on. You can then see what kind of solution is best in the use case that you have. And in your case, it was the RealWare HMT1, and there may be other devices that are more suitable for customer-facing activities and so on. So there's a lot of broad spectrum of devices and hardware that is out there that work really well in different scenarios. And so as we move to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about kind of the different areas that companies would typically use these type of solutions. And Schlumberger is going full circle around that, which is pretty amazing. So the idea is that this type of technology will typically use end-to-end. So you will use that across your whole supply chain. And what is important, if you pick a solution, you need to think about that, is does that take me through my logistics processes? Like inbound logistic. You get stuff. You need to put it in your warehouse. People move it around either with hands or with forklifts. And you do cycle counting. Then you have outbound logistics. You do line-side delivery if you have assembly scenarios. So you need some kind of a solution that can handle this part of the story. And then if you're a company that is dealing with assembly, you want to have the instructions. You want to do training on the job, on how you manufacture the goods. And sometimes the training on the job is enough just in the beginning. But if you have complex manufacturing, you definitely want to have kind of the end-to-end transparency, what you did. And you may not even be able to learn it by heart because everything changes so fast. And we're deployed in different workstations like every day, helping the workers keep up with the challenges that they have. That's really the story here. And then also doing quality assurance is to make sure that you can take pictures, videos, you're able to take a look at the statistics, how long did we take in the individual steps. That's about, especially in assembly processes. And then when you're out in the field, maintenance, it's more about having a very interactive set of information available, workflows, and being able to work through difficult problems that only arise once in a while maybe, and get the information that you need to do that at that very point in time. And then also for compliance issues, also to be able to document that certain things have been done in a certain way and at a certain time, that you're safe from a compliance perspective as well. And then, last but not least, collaboration is also a big element, is really looping in the right people. Now, the first elements were all talking about process and getting the right information, either in terms of instructions, but also dynamic backend system information or sensor information or information that comes from certain tools that you use, intelligent tools and intelligent wrench and all of that. But then at some point, you may also want to interact with your colleagues. So how do you do that? So you want to call them. I mean, that's what you do today, and you want this to work in a very intuitive and transparent kind of way, in the same way we would use FaceTime today. But FaceTime wouldn't let us share knowledge in a way that is meaningful for us on a conversation, because you want to pull up maybe certain diagrams, or you may want to take a snapshot of what you're seeing at the moment, and then do some highlightings on that, and that gets captured then in a call log afterwards. So you need a solution that is a little bit more rich, and allows you to have meaningful conversation with individuals and also groups of people. And that's what xAssist would allow you to do. So what we did is we kind of built that suite so you can very quickly start, like we said now, in a certain area, and then expand into the other areas at your own pace. That's kind of the idea behind it, and that's exactly what Schlumberger is doing. And David is going to share a little bit more about what the concrete examples are of what they're doing.
So I think we saw this in the opening video, and Sanjay presented it, so thanks for stealing my thunder, but I'll show it to you for the third time, right? Third time's a charm. So what we did here was, if we go back to the kind of the journey, right, of our proof of concept, this is kind of our proof of concept, right? It was done in manufacturing, but what we did was we took 3 technicians of similar background so that we'd have some kind of baseline that was fair, and had them go through a process of building a small component. And again, what was shown, right, was, you know, as they go through these steps between paper and a tablet and in a hands-free device, we clearly saw that efficiency gain. That was, you know, if we use the tablet as the base scenario, we still see an efficiency gain, right? And not surprisingly, there was mistakes, so they had to ask for help. Forgot to put the electronic discharge strap on the wrist, right? So it kind of showed us that we're moving in the right direction. By not only taking where we are with digital and the handheld, but moving to the hands-free. And so if I jump quickly back over to this journey slide, right, and now that we move over to a pilot, right, we see the efficiency, we get some gains, and we did some other ones that we haven't shared here with the videos, to further prove out that this is going to bring us value. We get into these now. Let's do some full-scale pilots, and if we break this one down into 3, the first one's the architecture. We heard a little bit about on-prem, off-prem. You want to go to cloud. You know, what's secure for your environment. Also using the use case. So I think when you target something, and again, if you look at our selection, and we chose more of the what we call assisted reality. You know, we have projects going on in virtual. We have augmented reality projects going on. But the assisted reality stuff is what I consider the low-hanging fruit. That's going to bring us kind of the biggest bang for our buck, right? And so the use cases that we chose, we're going to really showcase that to get us that momentum, to get the buy-in from the field technicians. And the last one is content creation. We've all talked about this, right? And there's no shying away from it. It's a challenge, right? You take a tablet, let's say an iPad, for example, you have all this real estate, and now we're moving it down to a smaller screen. There has to be a little bit of change on how you design the content, right? We'll be the first to tell you that all of our standard work instructions today probably aren't perfect. They probably weren't designed perfect. In fact, some of them, they almost go look at the airline industry, and now they're almost too long. So I think there's a shift on both sides that needs to happen in order to make this work. And so we looked at the content generation. Again, here we're looking at the xInspect with the Frontline Workplace Creator. And I'll be the first to tell you here, I mean, and I know a lot of there's different solutions, but this simply can take you from not having anything and put this on a wearable in a matter of, now it'd almost be saying minutes, right? If you get comfortable with this in a matter of minutes or hours, you can have a solution deployed to a headset, right? Most of these are hardware agnostic, to then be able to go out and use these trials and do the proof of concept. So if there's ever any hesitation of can I do this? The answer is absolutely yes, you can. And again, drag and drop, you can play videos, checklist, images, photos, videos. Percy, I don't know if you want to mention a few more things about your creator here, but certainly you stop by the booth and get a demo right on that hands-on feel there.
Yeah. Just maybe one or two things here. I think the important thing is that you manage to do two things. Enterprise processes are incredibly complex these days. So you want a tool that is capable of handling that complexity. So it needs to be able to be super comprehensive and interact with lots of systems and all of that. But at the same time, you want it to behave like an Apple product. So that's kind of the bridge we're trying to build here. And I think we're doing a relatively good job. You need to judge for yourself, really. So there's a graphical layer that you also see represented here that you can very quickly pull stuff together. But then you can also dig deep and kind of open up each of the components and do some configuration in each of them if you want to have more power on that.
So what you see here is an example we just kind of showed what we can put onto a headset. Here's a very simple checklist format. Believe it or not, a lot of stuff is checklists. And this is where it's a big win for these wearable devices and very easy to build, to be quite honest. So now I'm going to show you a couple of use cases. The first one is digital inspection. And I don't think we've told this in the past a little bit, but in a lot of the promo videos we see are amazing. But this was shot with a GoPro and a guy walking around. So what you see here is an actual use case. This is actually being used in the field today. And so what this is a technician walking around a piece of equipment. So they're able to walk up to this, interact the QR code. So now I know what type of asset this is. I know the asset serial number. And don't know if we have sound, but there we go. So if you have audio, you can hear him speaking through these, right? But we gain some contextual information about that piece of equipment by interacting with it. And now by simply just walking around, you have the checks that you want to do right in your field of view.
Documents missing.
Completely hands-free, and you're able to capture those, right? Now you may be wondering, he just said documents missing, and he's going to continue on, right? We need to know that information so that can be passed to the next technician
Expired.
or maybe a different role to then go get the proper paperwork. Same with a fire extinguisher, right? So we need to have this information, but now we're able to instantly send this digitally to solve those problems. And again, completely hands-free, outside, field of view, and this is being used widely throughout the organization for these checklist-type components.
Secured.
So the next one we're going to show is a remote support. And once again, this is filmed with a GoPro. What you see currently sitting there, this is our team in Denton, Texas, just north of here, that we consider the Reliability Support Center. So they're sitting there and monitoring all the equipment globally for certain segments that we have. And so I'm going to let this analog play throughout, and then I can make a few comments.
So right now you're looking at, I'll just point out where you're looking at the bus disk, the external bus disk right over here. If you can see the circle.
Yes,
the orange part.
I just see that.
And
Yeah, it's been highlighted in green.
yes, that's correct. And that's the right way to install it, but I'm going to show you some pictures over here so you're completely sure and you have installed it correctly. I'm going to send you some attachments over here. And you have already removed the bus disk from the discharge port, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's all empty. The old ones are gone.
Can you see this picture?
Yes, I do see the picture.
Yeah, so basically the hole which you see at, it should be at the bottom.
Yeah, it's right here. So it matches. Perfect.
Alrighty, make sure the expiration date, everything is good on this thing. It's banded, pressure tested. So all the certifications are there, and then you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So, quick comment on this one. You may be asking, the shop floor looks really clean and very quiet, right? Can I hear these guys in noisy environment? And with the noise cancellation, right? In fact, the expert side, so the guy sitting at the computer, would actually only hear that voice. It would completely knock out any of the background noise. So we've done this on rigs and et cetera, and it's very, very powerful. And not only are you seeing that peer-to-peer, but now you can share things like documents, pictures, video, recording, draw, augment on the screen so that they see exactly what you want them to see. And again, as we've been shared through numerous sessions and panels, the value here is exponential. And surprisingly enough, or not surprisingly, but maybe falls back on me, is when we started this journey, in fact, we were like, oh no, we don't want to do any of this remote support stuff, right? But in fact, it's actually become one of the biggest deployments that we have. And so I have one more video to show, and this is what I kind of consider of like a YouTube live, kind of just an interesting dynamic here of, can we take technicians that are learning, and when we think of training, we think of like virtual reality, right? Or maybe even using augmented reality. But in fact, you can still do this with 2D, right? So taking a simple process, filming that field of view, showing them exactly what to do, and then allowing the technician to do this. And so we've had some really valuable use cases by doing training as well. So if we kind of summarize, again, the 2D assisted reality focus areas that we have, digital inspection is a huge one, right? Checklists, standard work instructions, quality control, compliance, move over to ILT inspections. So now we're actually walk up to a piece of equipment, interact with that, see the pressure, the temperature. This is another value-driven process that, again, is it being widely pushed? We're starting to drive down that path, but we really see some value of these guys from a safety standpoint of seeing what's going on in real time. And the last one, of course, is remote support. And so if we kind of bundle these up with some metrics, of course, the quality, right? HSC, we talked about safety earlier. There was a panel talking like, what's the number one important in your company? And it's safety, right? We don't shy away from that as well. Of course, it's very important. And with these devices now, that's a big selling point because now you're not holding something, you're completely hands-free. And in our cases, we have to have impact gloves on. So now you don't have to take those off, go through a tablet. You can keep your gloves on, keep your awareness while you're doing this. And the big one here highlighted is the efficiency. Because for us, some of those numbers between 30 to 50% efficiency, we can then translate these into financial dollars, which obviously is important to the management team. And so if we kind of circle back around to the beginning, we looked at the paper, we looked at the digital, and this is kind of just bringing them all together, showing that, yes, we see the efficiency and we see the visibility, right? So now we're starting to gain more and more of this digital footprint and input into our systems, and the value is exponential. And again, if we go back to one of the other panels and they said, on a scale of 1 to 100, where are you? I mean, I think majority of us would agree that we're in that early 10%, and we've just barely scratched the surface. And again, jumping back to our journey, as we move to the rollouts and how do we move from 100 devices to 1,000 to 10,000, it's a challenge, right? And we've yet to kind of tackle that. We're still in that early adoptive phase. But just like earlier, kind of our 3 points. The first one is connectivity. Believe it or not, we don't always have connectivity. And there's some interesting methods around this, but a lot of our stuff depends on satellite connectivity, especially in our field environments. But you imagine you're in the desert of Saudi Arabia, you're not going to have connectivity. So that's a challenge, not only for the remote support side, but also for the checklist side. Fortunately for the checklist and our work instruction stuff, we can use offline capabilities, so we're still able to capture the information and send it up at a later date. But nonetheless, connectivity is a challenge. The next one is device management or application management. As we scale these, we need to know where they are. We need to be able to remotely manage these. And to be frank, the big concern for us was the PIN. On our phones, we have the fingerprint or you have a 4-digit PIN. This becomes a little bit more challenging as you do this on a device. And so we've come up with some creative methods on now how we're managing these. Is the content on the device need to be secured, et cetera. And the last one is data management. And kind of Percy mentioned on it earlier, we have this information in the middle, but how do we take now the back end, the front end, and start to connect everything together to really gain that full visibility throughout the systems, right? So when I capture something, it goes all the way into my maintenance systems and back and forth. And so that's really the biggest key points as we roll this out, is we really have to become productive. And the last slide here is more of a question, but more of a kind of a comment on my side to leave you with is, what drives innovation? And for us, it's very simple. It's the guys in the field. If I go back to what I said earlier, if we neglect this, if we just take a device and say, hey, you're going to use this, they're going to simply take it off, throw it in the trash, right? Sure, we can say it makes their job faster, it's easier, they don't have to fill out paperwork, but we have to keep these guys in mind. And a quick backstory on this, when we started to develop the MT maintenance tool product, the guys went out to the field, they had all this fancy equipment, it was going to make their job easier, they plugged it in, they showed them what was going on. Within an hour of them leaving, guess what? They unplugged everything. And so the same type of knowledge has to be transferred even to this wearable, is to keep your end user in mind, because ultimately they're the ones going to adopt the technology. So with that, I guess we have a few minutes for questions and answers.
Hi, it's Kerry Thatcher from LibraStream. One of the adoption challenges that we've heard about is you get yourself to the point of proving that this works, which you've done an amazing job of, and then when it goes to roll out to production, people say, I've got 10,000 or 5,000 procedures. What do I do now? And they get stuck and they get scared and say, how do I go from all of that install base, which is paper for the most part, or something else, or spreadsheets, into full production? I'm wondering whether or not that's a problem you've thought about or encountered, and if so, what you're going to do about it.
That's a tough one. Yes, absolutely is a problem. And again, with our executive management team, that comes up constantly, right? In fact, some of our teams are like, well, I don't know where to start because I don't even have the content, or I don't know how to build the content, or how do I take all this content and put it over? And I think time after time we see is sometimes that content wasn't actually created correctly in the first place. And so it's getting a kind of a shift in the way they think about, entering the information or changing the way they've designed this documentation. We'll be the first to tell you, a lot of our work instructions were designed after the airline industry, but that doesn't fit on necessarily how we do that in the field. And so it's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. I think we're still absolutely trying to solve it. We don't have an answer, but we take some of these low-hanging checklist, basic work instructions that kind of bring us the highest value, and we start with those, and then we can start to move into the other systems and get that buy-in.
And just to comment on kind of the broad masses of companies that you are not alone with that, right? Lots of companies at scale that have that problem. There's typically two approaches that I see. It's the land and expand approach that you mentioned. Start where the most value is, probably 80% or 20% of the work instructions have 80% of the value. So start with those, don't focus on the millions that may not generate value. And the second thing is make use of all the automatic tools where you can pull it in and transform the existing data and make it available, and we can help with that. So these are typically the two approaches that we see, and they're often combined.
Hey, this is Adam Brooks. I'm with Invista. One of the problems that I'm running into a lot is any sort of high IP flowing through an AR system. So whether that be the actual video of an asset during a remote expert call, but especially when you get into things like pulling up PNIDs or diagrams that are really our bread and butter. Any tips or tricks or suggestions for how you've worked with clients to help them feel comfortable sharing that kind of high IP information on your platform?
Well, I'll take that one because that's more of a platform question. Well, there's different scenarios, and you would handle these different. Most of the customers that have really very strong IP, they would prefer the solution to be run on premise. So we run it on premise, and we run it within their network. So it's not leaving the network whatsoever, and the data is encrypted within that network. So we work with Airbus as well, and they are one of these shops that would really be very keen on doing things that are secure, and they came over to our facilities and we did an audit on our system, and in the end we got the approval to run it. So they usually take a pretty close look at kind of what system they deploy, and then it needs to have the right model.